All right, everybody. Tuesday, November 19th. I can't believe we're here. The sun is going down early. Thanksgiving is around the corner, and we only have 2, maybe 3 game previews left on the 2024 season. Pat, can you tell me a little bit about your background here?
This is Billy Ray and I doing some compression therapy last year. It might have been after the pit game, before the pit game. Regardless, this is what we all need. We all need some form of therapy at this point in the season. You know, we're about to spend an hour with you guys. It's been a tough year. I think all of us could use some red light, some cryotherapy, some compression therapy. Go for a walk, clear your head. Virginia Tech is favored in the 9th game of the season here this Saturday. We have not been doing the job of beating teams when we are favored. So is it the kiss of death that we are a favorite on the road here this Saturday? We'll find out. But yeah, that's just a little plug of take care of yourself. You know, it's getting cold. Got that seasonal depression. Got that daylight savings where it just, you know, it's almost dark. It's only 4:13 here. It's already pretty dark. Take care of yourself, Billy Ray. We are the Sons of Saturday. We're in Charlotte, North Carolina. We are gobbling down to Durham this weekend to watch the Hokies, and we will be doing a Duke preview right now. Can I get a vibe check on you, Billy Ray, as you unmute your microphone?
Yeah, that's gotten me like the last few weeks. Yeah, I mean, it's just been tough. I know, do you want to just give a precursor? Because I know in our YouTube, it will be separate, but on our podcast, it'll be together. Our special guest that we have this week. Little teaser for the people.
Yeah, at the end of the pod, we will be having on Clarkston Hines, who is a former ACC Player of the Year, All-American, one of the GOATs of Duke football. I actually know him through the network here in Charlotte, so we're excited to have him on. So we'll tack it on to the end of the podcast, and then if you're on YouTube, it'll be on a different YouTube link. So somewhere down there or down there, I'm sure it'll be in the related tab here.
You know, it's been tough. My tag name here is Enduring Durham. We're actually going through all of these conversations now. It's almost like a sick joke, right? You go through this football season, 8:00 kickoff in Durham, 8:00 kickoff versus UVA. And look, we're going to do a complete recap of the season, but I think you and I have called each other multiple times over the last couple of weeks and just been like, I can't believe this is where we are on the day of our Lord, November 19th, 2024. It's shocking.
Mentally, I am painting the picture, and we are still. It's 8:30 p.m. and the band at the Tin Roof on Broadway in Nashville is playing Enter Sandman for the 3rd time, and everyone in there is super sweaty, and there's Michelob Ultras everywhere, and it's super loud, and the energy is through the roof, and that, unfortunately, my friends, was the peak of the 2024 campaign. Before it even got started, we peaked.
Damn. Well, let's dive into Duke. We got a big one here. Opportunity to win a game on the road against a better than normal Duke team, coached by a familiar foe. We will.
A couple high Qs submitted. Ty G. No jumping for me until we are ranked again. No more losing, please. This is a form of strike, going on strike from our guy Ty G. Totally understand where that's coming from. Expressing yourself in the form of not jumping to Enter Sandman until we see some results on the playing field. So approve of the freedom of expression there. We'll say that. I know Billy Ray has other opinions, but Pete McGee.
Yeah, I mean, hold on. We have done our job, showing up, being loud, being impactful, impacting the game where we can. And I think it's what makes us special. So I hope we continue to do it. I will say, though, I think there are a lot of people, and this is not going to be a completely negative podcast, but you're going to flip into beat Duke mode in a minute. But I think there are a lot of households having conversations around season tickets next year, the trip to the UVA game, A lot of those conversations are taking place, and nobody had that on their radar at the beginning of this season. And it's just kind of I don't want to say it's an unfamiliar place because it feels like we've been dwaddling in this kind of pool for a while. I just thought that we weren't going to be here in 2024, but here we are.
Yeah.
Man. Pete McGee. This is big news for Pat. It is Pat's birthday celebration. He is turning the big 3-0. That is huge. So his haiku, happy 30th, a birthday present for Pat, bowl eligible. That would be nice. That would certainly be nice. I think the last projection I saw Pat hold me accountable is the Gasparilla Bowl in Florida, or some Florida bowl. That's the last projection that I saw.
Right.
But we will see. I do want to extend a shout out to these 5 seniors who were selected for the Reese's Senior Bowl in Aeneas Peoples, Dorian Strong, Bashal Tootin, Jalen Lane, and Daquan Felton. Awesome recognition. Awesome opportunity. A game worth tuning into to see those guys compete, and wishing them all of the best in their future a few weeks away. So I hope we get to see them all play in Virginia Tech uniforms here. But awesome recognition for those guys.
Here we go. Know the foe. The Duke Blue Devils are coached by Manny Diaz. Familiar name. This is his first year at Duke. Prior to Duke, he was the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach at Penn State in 2022 and 2023. So he essentially was Coach Pry's replacement at Penn State when Coach Pry was hired away from the DC duties up in Happy Valley. Manny was the head coach at Miami from 2019 to 2021. So that 2019 Miami game was against Manny down there. The Hendon Hooker, Dalton Keene game where our offense just exploded. Prior to Miami, Manny was at Temple as head coach, assistant at Mississippi State, Louisiana Tech, Texas, Middle Tennessee State, NC State, and Florida State as well. Overall, Manny is 28-18 as a head coach, 0-2 in bowl games, but bowl eligible in his first year here as head coach of the Duke Blue Devils in his mighty return to the Atlantic Coast Conference. Now, speaking a little bit more in depth on the Duke Blue Devils, their first season was the 1888 season. So this is their 136th or 37th year of football. They play in Wallace Wade Stadium, which is a capacity of 35,018 people. We got a group of about 45, 46 coming up. So, it's a mighty chunk of Wallace Wade, I would say. Billy Ray, have you been to a game at Wallace Wade before?
I have never been to Wallace Wade. I always made fun of the track, which I've been told is no longer there. 35,000 people just makes me think of how awesome the new Northwestern Stadium is going to be. I know we've talked about that a little bit this week. I'm excited to see that. But real quick, before we get into like the Hokie history, I actually enjoy this segment here. Like totem pole of dislike for Duke. Like, where do they rank for you on teams that you disdain?
The bottom.
Okay. Yeah. I think
you have to have a legitimate fan base to be kind of in that conversation. Mm-hmm. And for Duke, I mean, if we want to talk about basketball, then it's a completely different conversation. Right. They're the top dog. It's Duke and everyone else when it comes to basketball. Beating Duke is a national pastime for, all 300 plus college basketball programs. You would say, oh, did Duke lose? Then that's a good day for America, right? That's just how it is when you got the target on your back. But for football, we've had some great games. We're going to go down the Hokie history here. There's been some really fun games with Duke. Unfortunately, Virginia Tech and Duke are rarely ever ranked at the same time. Over the past 10 years, it has seemed, every other game, one of the teams is ranked in the contest. But Billy, where do you have Duke on your, like and dislike list?
Yeah, I would say Duke is one of those teams where when they're playing against a team they're not supposed to beat, I'll root for them. I like to see them put on for the ACC. They've been a little pesky over the last like 5 or 6 years. They've stepped up and punched above their weight a couple of times. Obviously, there's the infamous Duke jersey. Still own that. Hand up. Bad on me, but I still do love Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum, NBA Finals champion with the Boston Celtics.
We
and
did
obviously
it.
A lot of respect for Coach K.
We did
That's right.
He was fun to watch when he came to Castle. Was he on that team with Okafor as well?
I believe so. It's so interesting playing against Duke because you have to like familiarize yourself with the roster every single year, except for like Roach, who's been there for a while. But every single year, it's like, oh, there's this new guy who's awesome. Let me read up on him before we play him.
Jumping back into the Duke lore, 161 draft picks from Duke. That's actually one less than Virginia Tech all time. Now, Duke has been playing football longer than Virginia Tech has, but I thought that was interesting. Duke has won 17 conference championships, 7 ACC championships, and 10 Southern Conference championships. It has been a very long time since they last won an ACC title. It was under Steve Spurrier in 1989. So the year Taylor Swift was born, Duke Blue Devils went 8-4, won the conference. Wallace Wade as head coach. I mean, you want to talk about an era. Wallace Wade was coaching at Alabama in 1930. And he was like, hey, guys, I'm going to take my talents to Durham, North Carolina. And had a handful of former Bama players come up, future Duke assistants come up as well. And they just went on a run, won a ton of Southern Conference championships, 7 in 16 years that Wallace Wade was at Duke, led them to 2 Rose Bowls. And also, since World War II was going on during this tenure of Wallace Wade in 1941, they played a Rose Bowl at Wallace Wade Stadium. So, if you've never been out west to Pasadena to see the Rose Bowl, you actually can go to the East Coast Rose Bowl. It is in Durham, North Carolina. It's called Wallace Wade Stadium. Couple other things about the Duke Blue Devils. They are 8-8 in bowl games. They have 538 total wins, which is actually a lot more wins than you would think a Duke football team has. The rivalries for Duke are North Carolina, Wake Forest, and NC State. They've had 6 consensus All-Americans, including Clarkson Hines, who's joining us after this preview. And I think, Billy Ray, if you want to talk about the modern era, like peak Duke in the modern era, it was definitely under David Cutcliffe, who was there from 2008 to 2021. Could you pinpoint a specific game or moment when you were like, oh, Duke is pretty good at football during this tenure? Because I have one.
I guess it would be the year. It had to be any moment of the year where they went and they played against, I believe they played A&M in the Cotton Bowl. Chick-fil-A Bowl. That's right. And Johnny Manziel had that crazy sideline play. But Coach Cutcliffe, like a legend in college football history, obviously his connection with Peyton Manning and Tennessee, and did a really good job at Duke. And look, Duke is one of those programs that have like a built-in ceiling. We're going to talk a little bit about that ceiling here in a little bit because Manny Diaz actually has a chance to punch through that ceiling for the first time since World War II. So, but that's what I would say. I would say that year that they went to the Chick-fil-A Bowl, that was a really, really good Duke team.
Yeah. Steve Spurrier won ACC Coach of the Year in 88 and 89. Duke made the All-American Bowl in 1989. But yeah, to your point, the Texas A&M game it's 2013. They won 9 games the following year. Johnny Manziel made that epic play, but Duke was tough. Like Duke went to the ACC championship. I think they got blown out by Clemson or Miami or one of the two. This was, during the carousel of the Coastal, where every year a new Coastal team would make it to the ACC championship. God, we all miss the Coastal. But any other general thoughts, general feelings towards or with the Duke Blue Devils and their lore?
I would say Duke does a really good job of. I think they're general. They're smarty pantses like Virginia, but they're not in your face smarty pantses. I know a couple of Duke grads. I'm dating the daughter of a Duke grad. I've never met a Duke fan in person that I left that conversation feeling the same way that I do when it pans to the Cameron Crazies on television. If you see the Cameron Crazies on television, you're just like, that looks like one of my least favorite people. But then you meet them in person, they're not that bad. So that's kind of my observation.
It is wild. We have in the same calendar year, Virginia Tech plays Vanderbilt, Stanford, Duke, Boston College, Virginia, Syracuse too. A lot of smarty pants schools here on the 2024 campaign. Georgia Tech. I mean, we got a smart conference. Let's clap it up. Let's clap it up. You know, we can't win on the field, but we are winning in the classroom in this great conference led by Jim Phillips. A couple other Duke notable alums. Richard Nixon, 38th President of the United States, has a law degree from Duke. Melinda Gates, Bill Gates, co-founder of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And then we also have Grant Hill, Christian Laettner, the entire roster of basketball legends. Jay Billis, probably my favorite ESPN commentator for basketball. Handful of cabinet members.
Dude, we're missing one. Roanoke legend and head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, JJ Redick, dude. Former podcaster, former corner three expert. I mean, that's a big one for Southwest Virginia, man. That is the guy.
That's special. Special. Some family members in my family as well on my mom's side that we'll be seeing this weekend. So grandparents have lived in Durham since 1990. So I've spent a handful of holidays and summer camps and all the above down in the Greater Triangle. All right. So any other thoughts before we dive into the Hokie history?
Yeah, this is a thought to preempt Hokie history. I was thinking about this today. Think you would be hard pressed to find a program in the Coastal who has given Virginia Tech more like devastating. I'm not saying losses that had consequences, because the 2019 loss to Duke didn't really have consequences. Now, the 2019 loss to Duke in March Madness had consequences, but I feel like there have been a lot of times that Duke has been holding the knife that has been thrusted into the chest of Virginia Tech on multiple occasions, whether it's Virginia Tech just gets ranked and then they lose to Duke, or coming in and handling business on the 1999 team. I feel like Duke is like sneaky underrated in causing Virginia Tech fans pain. Georgia Tech's on that list too. But I think Duke is one that you don't think of. But then when you go through the history, there are some bummers on here.
Yeah, I think it's a really good way to put it. Like seasons that are already over, where we're like, oh, we have a Duke game. And if it's a 4 or 5 loss season, Duke is one of those losses. It's not like we're going 11-1 or 10-2 or 9-3, and one of those losses being Duke. It's more so been on the season fighting for bowl eligibility season, where the Duke game has been a dogfight and it comes down to the final possession, which seems like we had a handful of those.
Think about this too, Pat, and I know you're going to talk about both games. The beginning of the end of the Fuente tenure for a lot of people was that 2019 Duke game. And then coincidentally, correct me if I'm wrong, Coach Fuente's last game as head coach of Virginia Tech was a beatdown of Duke on the road. So it kind of bookended that disappointment period, if we can label it that.
If that Old Dominion game in 2018 was the first domino, Duke 2019 was domino number 2. And then the mishandling of 2021 kind of made that snowball bigger and bigger. But let's jump into the Hokie history. This is our 31st matchup versus the Blue Devils. I wrote here, I'm not really excited to talk about our history versus Duke, but there have been some good football games. It's just our program over the last decade was here, and it came down to here, and Duke was way down here, and now they're like here. I know Billy Ray had some he had some programs over the past decade comparing records. And did Duke have a better record in conference than Tech over the last decade? Is that what it was?
So the numbers that I ran, and we'll run this for some other programs. I was messing around on ChatGPT and I was like, pull me the records of these teams. And I just thought of random teams that I automatically rank like below us or equal to us. And Duke was one of these teams. So again, the general attitude towards Duke is like, oh, it's Duke. Well, from 2018 to 2024, Virginia Tech is 40-44 with 2 coaches plus 1 interim, 4 bowl bids, and 1 bowl win. In that same time period, Duke is 42-42 with 2 coaches and 1 interim coach, 3 bowl bids, and 3 bowl wins. Head-to-head, the Hokies have won 3 of 5 matchups, but if you just look at that snapshot, these 2 teams have essentially been the same. Duke actually has a better winning percentage than Virginia Tech does from 2018 to 2024.
Yeah.
The tough stat.
And this game was played 19 straight seasons up until last season. We did not play Duke in 2023. We did play them in 2022. Last time out, Tech was defeated in Durham 24-7, and it just never was a football game. We had a 1 long bomb to Daewon Lofton, but it was all Devils. 19-11 is Virginia Tech's record versus Duke, and we have won 5 out of the last 7 games versus the Blue Devils. Let's take it back to 2004. First ever ACC game when Virginia Tech joins the conference is against the Duke Blue Devils. Hokies get the dub in Durham. I'm going to fast forward to 2010. 2010 was at home. Tyrod Taylor made some really fun plays in this contest. Had a nice Danny Cole touchdown, had a Dyrell Roberts touchdown. Just remember Tyrod rolling out left and throwing it across his body to Dyrell in the southeast corner of the stadium. 2012, Duke starts off up in Lane Stadium 20-0. And I'm watching from home, and I'm like a rising senior in high school, like about to put in my application to Virginia Tech. I'm like, oh my God, like, are we really going to lose to Duke? And thankfully, on the back of J.C. Coleman and Marcus Davis and Logan Thomas, JC rips off one of the longest runs in Lane Stadium history, goes for 2 touchdowns, 183 yards on 13 carries, and Logan Thomas connected on 2 like 40, 50-yard bombs to Marcus Davis for touchdowns. So we won the game 41-20, scored 41 unanswered after a scary first quarter in Lane Stadium. We hosted again the next year at Lane Stadium, and this was a devastating. Like, one of my core bad memories in Lane Stadium was 2013 versus Duke. Orange effect, to be precise. Hokies come in ranked number 16. We were on a 6-game winning streak after dropping week 1 against Alabama. And we score 10 points to Duke's 13. We pick Duke off 4 times, including 3 from a guy named Kendall Fuller. But Logan Thomas threw 4 picks. So Hokies lose 13-10. And this was Duke's snapping a streak of 47 consecutive losses to ranked teams. They come to Lane Stadium. I'm sure we were 10-plus point favorites, and Duke had not defeated a ranked team on the road since 1971. We also had 2 tough field goals missed by Cody Journell. It was just a all-out disaster of a football game. And the first game I ever saw Virginia Tech lose in Lane Stadium was the Duke 2013 game. So really traumatizing experience for your boy. 2014, we returned the favor, upset ranked Duke in Durham. They're ranked number 21, beat them 17-16, had an epic, like Isaiah Ford falling down, catch, touchdown in the corner of the end zone. He had like hundreds of those. So it's not even special because he did it like every week. Had a very suspect fake punt late in the game where we did not convert. And thankfully, Duke missed the field goal, but won 17-16. Really sketchy game, but got the dub. 2015, tough loss in 4 overtimes on homecoming. This was just
Man, that was brutal.
Joey Sly attempts like a 70-yarder. didn't really come close, but exciting to take some swings.
Yeah,
you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, Billy Ray. So 2016, back in Durham, Greg Stroman blocks the field goal. Adonis takes it to the house. We get our first win over Danny Dimes, 24-21 in Durham, keeping that momentum going in 2016. Daniel Jones comes back to Virginia Tech in 2017. It's pouring down rain.
that was such a fun game.
We were ranked number 13, back in the polls. I wonder if that was the highest we've been ranked. 13 was how high we were ranked in that game. Probably a top uniform combo of the last decade. The metallic helmets.
Yeah.
Josh Jackson had a great game. Guys were slipping and sliding after. 2018, the Dalton Keene game. Hit
Epic
Dalton,
pick.
just scores a touchdown. There's like thousands of Tech fans getting fired up. Hopefully we see that this weekend.
How great was Tech's 2 games against North Carolina schools in 2018? Like, the North Carolina comeback was unbelievable. This game was awesome. Took over the entire stadium. 2018 against the state of Carolina, our football team was bad, but they were fun in the state of Carolina.
Our offense was special. Dare I say special? Did you read me the stat line the other day? Ryan Willis was
his stat. If you just look at his stats from that year, the guy put up numbers. I mean, I think if I remember correctly, Pat, like, I don't think the podcast had started yet, but like before that season started, we were like, I mean, Brian Willis, first team All ACC quarterback. I don't know. It didn't work out that way, but his numbers were certainly eye popping going into that offseason.
I mean, he didn't start the whole season in 2018. 2,700 yards, 24 touchdowns, 9 picks. Like, Ryan Willis, was Ryan Willis him? That was also, it was on 58% completion percentage. But I mean, the guy could spin the bean, and he outdueled Daniel Jones that game. 332 passing yards, 3 touchdowns in his first ever start at Virginia Tech. You go on the road, you beat the 6th pick overall in the draft in 2020. Like that, pretty special moment. 2019 draft. Daniel Jones 0-3 against Virginia Tech. 2016, 17, 18. All right, Billy Ray. What kind of storylines do we have running here?
We did skip over 2019, which is an absolute disaster, but we don't need to talk about it. 2019 is done. Hokies are riding a 2-game loss streak. Duke is coming off of a bye, as are we. They lost to Miami and then beat NC State in a really, really tough competitive game. As far as Duke's season and how it's gone, they have wins over Elon, Northwestern, UConn, Middle Tennessee State, UNC, Florida State, and NC State, with losses to Georgia Tech, SMU by 1 point. By the way, back when we were like, hey, we need to get back into this ACC race, we were like, dude, Duke, you could do us a lot of favors, but we couldn't do ourselves any favors. And then they played Miami, lost to them in a pretty competitive game. The score didn't look like it. We were watching that game at Platform. Fun game up until the 4th quarter where Duke pulled away. They are 4-1 at home this season. So they have been formidable. And it was also the first bet that I won on the year in their game against Northwestern, which was just, and that was like the toilet bowl. That was a crazy watch. Windy, played in a high school stadium. Like it was wild.
I mean, if you would have told me before the year that Duke would have wins over Florida State, NC State, and Carolina, I think you would have said, wow, that's truly remarkable. And now, I mean, I guess their best win is NC State, but they haven't lost to bad teams either. Like this is this team has beaten who they should beat and lost to, teams that are better than them. And Haynes King, is a great quarterback. Jennings at SMU, and then obviously Cam Ward, where it was a game until the fourth quarter.
Some presser notes for you. Andy Bitter, he tweeted out, Pry calls quarterback Kyron Drones, Bashal Tootin, and Malachi Thomas questionable for Duke on Saturday. This one's more fun than it is like news. So I didn't know this. The Gosnells, Stephen Gosnell has 12 siblings, 4 sisters, and 8 brothers. That is a hell of a household. Do any of them have any eligibility? Stephen's first collegiate catch was against Duke when he was at UNC. And Stephen Gosnell is also Virginia Tech's leading wide receiver with 462 yards and 19.3 yards per catch. So thought that was fun.
And he did get engaged over the weekend too. I don't know if we
I didn't know this.
Yeah. So that's exciting. Married to the game, married to balling out in his home state, hopefully this weekend as well. So congratulations to Steven.
I know we spent a lot of time on the Hokies history, Duke lore. This really, I'm gonna preview these two teams, but it really comes down to these keys to the game. As far as a vibe check goes, again, both teams coming off a bye week. Duke has a chance to win 10 games for the first time since 2013 and the second time ever. They're 7-3. They got us, they got Wake, and they're going to have a bowl game. They also have only posted 2 regular seasons with 9 wins or more since 1941. 1941 is when World War II started. They did this in 2013 and 2014. So they're pretty jazzed to make history here. So that is the vibe check. Virginia Tech, disappointing, playing for a bowl game. Duke, opportunity to break some record books here. And my question really, Pat, is how bad do our guys want to go out there and win and finish on the on a high note? And I hope it's a lot. But we're going to find out. These are two teams with completely different mindsets, or supposed mindsets, if you just look at where they're sitting.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to spin it. They have a lot to play for, especially in year one. I think some of these year one coaches have went out and done a really good job this year. You talk about Manny Diaz, 7-3. They're playing for a 9-3 season, and it's almost a likelihood at this point. You got Bill O'Brien, who they've kind of tapered off the last few weeks, but they had a strong start. Mike Elko, hello. Yeah. If anyone wants to point at a big time success story over the course of this last season and first time head coaches, it's Mike Elko, who is knocking on the door of the playoff. So it's interesting to see how the coaching carousel has an impact on the ACC. Mike Elko was at Duke a mere year ago, and they were a great team last year with Riley Leonard as well. We didn't even talk about Mike Elko. Didn't think it would take this long to talk about Mike Elko, but I guess since we didn't play them last year, they weren't getting lined up with us. Who do we got on their offense, Billy Ray? I know you took some notes here.
So Jonathan Brewer is their offensive coordinator. He was the co-OC at SMU last year for their high-powered offense. I thought this was interesting too in his bio. He's an Arkansas grad with a bachelor in kinesiology and a master's from Auburn in adult education. Thought those were interesting notes. I don't have a lot of positive things to say about their offense in terms of numbers. They have 336.9 yards per game. They have one of the worst rushing attacks in the country at under 100 yards, 99.6. Shockingly, this is not the worst in the ACC. They are ahead of Syracuse and Florida State. Syracuse because they throw the ball a ton, and Florida State because they suck this year. So that's interesting. Malik Murphy, Texas transfer. This was a big story when Texas was making their run to the playoff. He's having a sneaky solid year, 2,366 yards on 22 touchdowns and 8 picks. His last 2 games were the best of his season so far in terms of QBR. At Miami and at NC State, he went on the road and accumulated 570 yards of passing and 5 touchdowns. He is not a big dual threat guy. He has not run the ball a ton. He is a thrower of the football and the hander off of the football to the running back, who then doesn't get that many yards. So
17 carries, minus 71 yards on the year for Malik. So do not expect Malik Murphy to be breaking any big runs. He has a long of 8 and 1 touchdown on the ground this year. I was intrigued by their leading rusher. His name, Billy Ray, is Star Thomas. 742 yards on the ground, averaging 4.1 yards per carry, has a long of 44, 5 touchdowns. Leading receiver for Duke, his name is Jordan Moore, 42 receptions, 632 yards, 15 yards per catch, 6 touchdowns. And then another threat through the air, Eli Pankel, 46 catches, 533 yards, long of 55. He also has 6 touchdowns. So those are wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, but they also have 2 other guys who are over 300 yards on the year, Samir Hagans and Quayshawn Brown as well. Defense.
Their defensive coordinator is John Patke. He was at Texas State for a year where they were ranked 2nd in the country in TFLs and 9th nationally in sacks. One of Manny Diaz's boys. They were in Miami together for 6 years. They have the 44th ranked scoring defense in the country. They're giving up 22.1 points per game. Every win that they have held their opponent to less than 22 points this year. So Manny Diaz, obviously defensive coordinator, defensive minded, very similar to Coach Pry in terms of their background and now being a head coach in the ACC early on in their career. I'm going to buzz through special teams because this is what I think is the meat and potatoes of this football game. So they have a punter, Porter Wilson. He's a stud. He has 22 punts over 50 yards. He had a 70-yard punt against Clemson. 70 yards, pretty impressive. And then their field goal kicker is also pretty good. He's 2 for 2 from 50 plus and 72% on the season. He knocked in a 49-yarder to ice the game versus NC State. So I say all of this, and you say, okay, like nothing above that you just talked about jumps off the page or is shocking, and you say, how are they winning? Like, how is this one of the best Duke teams that we've seen in a couple of years? Here's how. Duke is tied for 11th in turnover margin in college football. They win the turnover margin by 1.10 over the course of their football games. They are one of the least penalized teams in the ACC, and they have the best punter in the conference. So they don't do anything extraordinarily well. They just wait for you to screw up, and they're not going to screw up. And more times than not, they win the football game.
So what you're telling me is that they play complementary football.
They play complementary football, which is something that we on this very podcast have said over and over and over and over again is the biggest problem with our football team. And that is why, to me, this is such a scary matchup just because they have won football games over and over again by allowing the other team to make mistakes. And Virginia Tech is prone to making said mistakes. So, that's kind of how I feel about Duke. They're well coached. They play complementary football. They take the football away. They don't give the football away. That's why they are where they are.
16 forced fumbles on the year, 11 interceptions. So, yeah, I can see why they're winning the turnover margin when they have picked off opposition 11 times. Got a solid Solid defense. Okay. Keys to the game. We kind of just talked about it, right? You know, you're playing against a team that plays complementary football, which means you need to play better complementary football.
I completely agree. I think that Virginia Tech needs to stop the run. I didn't know this till I looked it up. Virginia Tech is second to last in the ACC in rushing yards per game from the opponent at 158.5 per game. Duke can't really run the football.
So allowing the most? It's
allowing
allowing the second most?
We are allowing the second most in the conference from our opponents. So Duke can't run the ball. We can't stop the run. Something's got to give. So I guess I did totally present that a little bit oddly. But on the defensive side, we need to stop the run. And on the offensive side, I don't think this is a key to the game. I think it's just a necessity. I don't care who's playing running back. There need to be more than 4 carries by running backs on Saturday. We're on the road. Set the tone. We can't be in a position where our running backs are only getting 4 carries. And again, if it's Bashal Tutin, great. If it's Malachi Thomas, great. If it's Prelude, if it's Coney, I don't really care who it is. It just has to be somebody, because that has to be a part of the game that you are making the other team have to respect. And we didn't do that last week. Again, Duke plays smart complementary football. They don't put themselves in bad spots. Can we avoid gifting Duke, or really any of our opponents, get out of jail free cards or tremendous fall into good luck situations? We haven't done that this year. We have not been able to avoid doing that in our football games. And that is why our record is what it is. And that is why this game gives me the heebie-jeebies, because the way that we play kind of fits directly into how Duke has won their football games this year.
It's really hard to know how Virginia Tech is going to game plan if we don't know if Kyron Jones is going to play. We don't know if Bashal Tutin is going to play. I know a lot of people are saying it today on X. Not sure if we will see Bashal Tutin ever play another down in a Virginia Tech uniform. Based on what are we playing for, based on what he has to play for, and stay healthy for the NFL draft. Could see Colin Schlee, who is going to be getting the football, when we run the football. Is it going to be PJ Prelo? Is it going to be Tyler Mason? Is it going to be Jeremiah Coney? Whoever it is, as Billy said, we should put them out on the field and give them the football. This is going to come down to defense and special teams. I really think so, because, I know the Duke defense is not the Clemson defense, but based on how we went out there last week versus Clemson, I am not inspired by our offense. And, this could be a low-scoring contest with a lot of punts. Duke's got a great punter. We also have a great punter. So I guess the key to the game is to play better complementary football than they play. And run the ball as much as you can to keep them off the field.
Benny's lines. Anybody with a game day pin gets $1 off the slice. Only 1 game left for this. Can't do it at Duke. Can do it against UVA.
And I'll make a comment on this because we got to get Jeremy to have those pins out at Count's Pharmacy. The Beat UVA pins, that's a pin you could wear every day of your life. Like, It doesn't have to be game week to wear the Beat UVA pin. So we'll tell Jeremy, hey, let's get those out right now. Make sure the students can grab them before they leave for Thanksgiving break. Come back to Blacksburg, have their Beat Duke pins ready to go, or Beat UVA pins ready to go.
Hokies currently are 3.5-point favorites on the road. The over-under is set at 47.5. We have our over-unders from Grant Watson. Running back carries 13.5. It's got to be over. Has to be over. Are you on this over with me?
Yeah, it needs to be over.
It needs to be over.
You're not going to win the football game based on how our offense has looked without giving the ball to whoever is our running back.
Hokies total yards, 269.5. It's so hard not knowing who's going to play. I don't know who's going to be out there. I will go a slight over on the 269.5.
I'm going to go the under with the blind faith that we have a special teams or defensive touchdown that I think gets us to our point total. Hokie's points scored 16.5. I have the over here.
I barely have the over. We'll talk about that in a second.
Drones and Tootin combined snaps on the field, 0.5.
I'm going to go under. Again, when we say this, like, this has nothing to do with the character of the players. I think they're genuinely really hurt, and they've been playing hurt all year. So I would honestly be surprised if it's not Colin Schlee, and he's banged up too. So I'd be surprised if it's not Colin Schlee and an assortment of running backs on Saturday.
Score predictions brought to
you. What do you got? Are they going to play?
I have the under 2, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yep.
Score predictions brought to you by our friends at Whitley's Peanuts, Virginia Peanuts, your stocking stuffers. They have really good stuff. Listen, if you guys are listening to this and you're like, Pat, Billy Ray, you guys talk about this peanut company all the time. Well, first of all, there's a preferred peanut of the Hokies. You've probably seen them in Lane Stadium. Maybe you had their sweet roasted peanuts. They're phenomenal. Check them out. Whitley'sPeanut.com. Use code SUNS24 for 10% off your stocking stuffer purchase this holiday season. What do you got?
I unfortunately am going Duke 24-17. I think that our style of play, or not style of play, the way that we have played this season plays into the way that they like to win games. And I think we'll be walking out of Wallace Wade Stadium with an L, unfortunately. Hope I'm wrong.
It's a kind of a story of the season, but I just have a hard time thinking that with our personnel, knowing that Drones is questionable, Tootin's questionable, we don't know how Schlee is, we don't even have Malachi ready to rock. If that is the case, we're going to have a hard time winning this football game and staying motivated over a team that is very motivated to break some records under a first-year head coach. So I have Duke 21, Virginia Tech 20. Tough way to round out the away slate.
Pat, I am going to head to F45 for Afterglow. And looking forward to seeing you in Durham, and looking forward to listening to this Clarkston Hines interview. Guys, if you're going to the game, be loud, have an impact.
Listen, there's nothing I want to do more than walk out of Wallace Wade Stadium with a dub. So hopefully we can put something together here and come out hot in the first quarter and keep it going.